Hello everyone, I'm going to go over the second round game from the US Championship, a game between Caruana and Aleksandr Lenderman. And in round 1, Caruana drew with the black pieces against Liang, so not the best start to the tournament. However, he is still, I would say, the main favorite to win because he is in top form and he is probably the best player in the world at this time, tied with Magnus Carlsen, but we will see about that in a few months. And in this game he had the white pieces against Aleksandr Lenderman, who is 25.99 at the moment, a strong grandmaster, but of course nowhere near Caruana's rating. And Caruana opened with pawn to e4. We have the French defense, e6, d4, d5, knight to c3. Caruana goes for the classical Rubinstein or the Winawer, whatever now Lenderman decides to play. And he plays bishop to b4, the Winawer variation. Of course, if he plays a knight to f6, this is now the classical variation. And after knight to c3, the d takes c4 line would be the Rubinstein variation. But the Winawer is considered to be the most active defense for black. After bishop to b4, of course, Caruana continues with the most common continuation and probably the only continuation for white in this line. e5, closing down the center. c5 by black, immediately striking at the queen side, opening up the position and activating his pieces, trying to resolve the issue of the light squared bishop. a3, chasing the bishop away. Of course, going back to a5 is a bad move. The most common idea and the only idea in this line is to take the knight on c3. So bishop c3 check, b takes c3, and now from this position on black has 3 moves. The most common one by far is knight to e7. This is the main line. After knight to e7, white will play queen to g4, attacking the g7 pawn. Black castles, bishop to d3 developing, increasing the pressure on h7, and now knight b to c6, and both sides stand okay. White has a slight opening edge, but nothing major, or not even an edge at all, because black is fast to strike at the center and open up his position. Of course, white never takes on c5. It's a bad idea in this line. The second line after b takes c3, if not knight to e7, is queen to c7 for black, just centralizing and increasing the pressure on the c file. And after queen to g4, f5, opening up the defense of the g7 pawn, queen to g3, this is the second variation. But Lenderman went for the third most common line, queen to a5. And this is now attacking the c3 pawn, which has to be defended, so bishop to d2, queen to a4, and now queen to g4 by Caruana. This is the most aggressive way to play, to attack the g7 pawn immediately. The second idea is queen to b1, centralizing the queen and increasing the pressure on the b7 pawn, and after c4, h4, attacking on the king side, knight to c6, h5, provoking the h6 weakness. White is ready to attack on the king side, and black will never feel comfortable castling. So in this line, after queen to b1, white most commonly pushes with h4, h5. But Caruana finds a balanced continuation which hasn't been played that often. First of all, after queen to a4, he plays queen to g4, the most aggressive way, and from this move on, of course, black can never take on c2. If he takes, this is just immediately losing after queen takes g7, because you have no way to compensate for the piece. You would have to play queen e4 check, bishop e2, and queen to g6, saving at least the checkmate. But after queen takes rook, you can see that it's immediately losing. So after queen to g4, black has to play king to f8 or g6, defending that way. Lenderman went for king to f8, and now from this position on, the only move that's been played is queen to d1, and this is the most common idea with more than 200 grandmaster games. And after b6, d takes c5, b takes c5, c4, bishop to a6. This is how the line goes. But Caruana went for a move that has only been played once before. So after king to f8, Caruana played h4, a very aggressive idea, and this now, of course, relinquishes white's opening advantage, because it doesn't develop a piece, it doesn't do anything about king safety, but practically speaking, it puts a lot of pressure on black's position, because the king is now stuck on f8, and if you manage to open up the position, the king is in dire straits. So from this position on, Lenderman continued with knight to c6 developing, and Caruana plays h5, just pushing on. And now, technically speaking, black has an advantage, but I would never have the black pieces in this position. I would always rather be white. h6, he has to prevent h6 by white, of course. Now queen to d1, after he had provoked h6 and pushed his h-pawn up the board. So the normal position after queen to d1 would look like this, but now after queen to d1 you can see the difference, those pawns are here. And now the game continues with c takes d4, knight to f3, giving up a pawn. Of course, black shouldn't really be capturing on c3 because after bishop takes, black has a lot of initiative, and now he does. And Caruana decided to sacrifice a pawn for a lot of pressure on black's king, and he managed to do that perfectly. So now after d takes c3, bishop to c3, you can see that white's position is already more active, and black went badly wrong somewhere. That's with taking the c3 pawn. Now Lenderman tries g5. He tries to solidify his king side. Perhaps he didn't count on Caruana taking up a son, but Caruana does. H takes g6, opening up the position. And now queen to e4. Of course, he doesn't want to recapture with the f pawn, opening up his king. This was his plan. And after bishop to e2, queen takes g6. But there is a problem with that. White is very fast to get all of his pieces into the attack. First, queen to d2. Getting the queen ready on the diagonal. Knight g to e7 developing. And now bishop to d3. One tempo on the queen. Queen takes g2. This is, from this position on, Lenderman should play queen to g7. And after king to f1, b6, the position is sort of normal. White has an edge. Of course, he has much more active pieces and an attack on the king, which is stuck on e8. But it's survivable for black. But after bishop to d3, Lenderman got greedy and actually got a losing position, because tactically, if your king is stuck on f8 and your queen doesn't have that many squares to go to, and you grab the g2 pawn, what do you expect? I mean, I think it's a very dubious move. Of course, it's immediately losing, but visually too, it looks pretty bad. Because after king to e2, of course, Caruana defends the knight, prepares the g1 square for the rook, connecting rooks, and queen to g4. Now simply rook h4, one tempo on the queen, queen to g7, and now rook a to g1, attacking the queen once again. And now knight to g6, rook to f4, increasing the pressure even more. Of course, the knight is pinned to the queen. Black should never be taking that. And even if he does, then after queen takes, because it would be with check. Even if he does, then after queen takes, the position would be completely losing. Let me just show you that. Okay, knight takes rook with check. Queen takes rook, and now the queen is attacked. And after, in this position, black actually loses the queen back because there is no squares. The bishop is covering h7, the g file is taken, and this square is taken by the queen. So black would have to give up the queen by taking the rook. So this doesn't work. And after rook to f4, he actually played an even worse move. Unfortunately for Lenderman, he played knight c to e7. And now this allows bishop to b4, pinning the knight, making the move completely useless. a5. Doesn't really do anything, and now I hope you can spot the winning tactic that Caruana played, finishing the game immediately, a move after which Aleksandr Lenderman resigned immediately. If you look at the position, there is a saying that goes pin and win, and I think it's what Nimzovic said, or perhaps even someone before him. If you look at black's pieces, the h8 rook is out of the game, the a8 rook is out of the game, the bishop on c8, the French defense bishop is useless as on move 1, the queen is stuck behind the knights, which are both pinned. And from this position on, Caruana has a simple winning tactic: rook takes g6. Now, of course, pawn can't take because it's pinned to the king. The knight can't take because it's pinned to the king as well, the ultimate pin. And if queen takes, simply bishop takes, and once again the pawn or the knight can't recapture. So from this position on, Lenderman just resigned. And it's not only a piece up, it's actually immediately lost, and you lose even more material. The best move for black would be queen to h7, at least trying to save the queen. But after bishop takes e7 check, king takes e7, simply rook g to f6, discovering an attack on the queen, preparing to capture the f7 pawn, and you can increase the pressure immediately with queen to c3. Getting into the position, you can in some positions play knight to d4 and attack here, and it's just completely busted. So after bishop to b4, increasing even more pressure, a5 was a nothing move, it doesn't really do anything. Rook takes g6. In true Caruana style, a simple attacking tactic which finished the game brilliantly. And this is actually a miniature. This is a 23 move game, and it justifies the status that Fabiano Caruana has at the moment in the chess world, and he's definitely a worthy contender for the World Championship title. And I can only hope that in his match against Carlsen they will play games like this and avoid the boring Spanish positions with a lot of maneuvering. Okay, everybody, I hope you liked this game by Fabi in round 2 of the US Championship, and stay tuned for more chess. Thanks very much. Bye.